Deep within California's vast and unforgiving wilderness, a mystery lay dormant for years, shrouded by the whispers of the wind through ancient redwoods and the relentless march of time. It was a story that began with a vibrant life, full of promise and adventure, and ended in a silence so profound it echoed across continents. This is the tale of Laura, a young woman who vanished into the embrace of nature, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions that tormented her loved ones for nearly a decade. Her disappearance was not a sudden, dramatic event, but a slow, agonizing fade into the unknown, a cruel twist of fate that transformed a planned solo hike into an endless nightmare. The initial reports painted a familiar, if tragic, picture: an experienced hiker, perhaps lost, perhaps injured, succumbing to the elements in a landscape known for its beauty and its brutality. Yet, the truth, when it finally emerged, was far more complex, more sinister, and utterly heartbreaking. It would challenge every assumption, redefine the very nature of an investigation, and reveal a darkness that few could have ever imagined. The story would not only unravel the fate of one lost soul, but also expose the vulnerabilities of those who seek solace in the wild, the intricate dance between human endeavor and nature's indifference, and the profound impact of a single, devastating discovery. The year was 2012, and Laura, an intrepid spirit with an insatiable wanderlust, embarked on what she believed would be another thrilling chapter in her life's adventure. Her destination: the majestic expanse of Sequoia National Park, a land of ancient giants and breathtaking vistas. Laura was not merely a casual visitor. She was a seasoned explorer, her backpack a testament to countless journeys through challenging terrains. Maps were meticulously folded, compass always at hand, and her resolve as sturdy as the sequoias themselves. She had planned this particular solo trek with her characteristic precision, meticulously charting a route through the lesser-known trails, seeking the solitude and raw beauty that only the deep wilderness can offer. The anticipation of the journey filled her with an almost palpable excitement, a sense of eager expectation that radiated from her every pore. Before setting off, she made sure to inform her family of her itinerary, a routine safety measure that offered a sliver of reassurance amidst the vastness she was about to confront. Her last known communication, a cheerful text message to her sister, spoke of the clear skies and the exhilarating promise of the days ahead. "Wish you were here," it read, a simple message that would soon carry an unbearable weight of longing and sorrow. As days turned into a week, and then into an unsettling silence, a creeping unease began to settle over Laura's family. The usual check-in calls, the brief updates that marked her safe passage, simply ceased. Her planned return date came and went without a trace, without a word. Each passing hour stretched into an eternity of agonizing uncertainty, punctuated by the relentless ringing of a phone that would never be answered by Laura's familiar voice. The initial calls to park rangers were met with the standard reassurances, the seasoned authorities advising patience, suggesting that perhaps she had merely lost cell service or extended her hike spontaneously. But her family knew Laura, knew her meticulous planning, her unwavering adherence to schedules when it came to their well-being. This was not like her. The reassurances quickly morphed into a gnawing fear, a cold dread that tightened its grip with every unanswered call, every unread message. The vast, beautiful landscape of Sequoia National Park, once a source of inspiration, now loomed as an ominous, indifferent entity, a silent keeper of secrets. The official search operation, when it finally commenced, was a monumental undertaking, a desperate race against time in a wilderness renowned for its ability to swallow human traces without a whisper. Park rangers, seasoned volunteers, and search and rescue teams mobilized with urgency, their collective hope a fragile beacon against the encroaching despair. Helicopters soared overhead, their rhythmic thrumming echoing through the canyons, while ground teams meticulously combed designated grids, their eyes scanning every rock, every crevice, every fallen log. They followed Laura's planned route, scrutinizing the faint impressions of her hiking boots, searching for any discarded item, any broken branch, any sign that could lead them to her. Days bled into weeks, the initial optimism slowly eroding under the relentless sun and the chilling nights. The search area was immense, the terrain treacherous, and the clues maddeningly scarce. They found no gear, no campsites, no definitive tracks beyond the initial points of entry. It was as if Laura had simply evaporated into the thin mountain air, leaving behind only the haunting specter of her absence. The sheer lack of evidence was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire ordeal, a vacuum of information that fueled endless speculation and deepened the agony of her family. As the active search eventually scaled back, the official designation shifting from missing to presumed lost, a somber acceptance began to settle over the park, but not over Laura's family. For them, hope, however faint, remained a stubborn ember against the encroaching darkness. They continued their own private search, driven by an unshakable belief that Laura was not merely lost, but that something far more inexplicable had occurred. The vast wilderness, with its towering trees and ancient stones, held its secrets tight, but her family was determined to pry them open, no matter how long it took. The years that followed Laura's disappearance were a testament to the enduring power of grief and the relentless pursuit of answers. Her family refused to let her memory fade, tirelessly advocating for continued searches, organizing their own expeditions into the treacherous backcountry, and keeping Laura's story alive in the media. They navigated the complex emotional landscape of hope and despair, each false lead a fresh wound, each unanswered question a new torment. The national park, while always helpful, eventually had to shift its resources, and the public's attention, while initially intense, gradually moved on. But for Laura's family, time stood still, forever marked by the gaping void she left behind. They commissioned private investigators, consulted psychics in their desperation, and pored over maps and aerial photographs with an obsessive fervor, searching for the slightest anomaly, the tiniest detail that might have been overlooked. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering was shadowed by her absence, a silent reminder of the laughter and light that had been extinguished too soon. They knew, with an agonizing certainty, that the answers lay hidden somewhere within that vast, indifferent wilderness. They spoke to other hikers, to park visitors, to anyone who might have been in the area around the time of her disappearance, piecing together a mosaic of fleeting impressions and vague recollections. But every thread they pulled seemed to unravel into further ambiguity, deepening the mystery rather than solving it. The case, officially cold, remained a burning inferno in the hearts of those who loved her. They held on to the slim hope that perhaps, just perhaps, Laura had found a way to survive, or that some compassionate soul had stumbled upon a clue that would finally lead them to her. The mountains, however, remained stoic and silent, guarding their secrets with an ancient, unyielding resolve, mocking the tireless efforts of a grieving family. They walked the same trails, breathed the same air, but found no trace, no whisper of the vibrant young woman who had walked there before them. The wilderness was beautiful, but it was also a tomb, and they were searching for a ghost. Then, nearly a decade after Laura vanished, a discovery was made that would rip open the wounds of the past and send shockwave through the quiet corners of the investigation. In the spring of 2021, a group of hikers, far off the established trails, stumbled upon what appeared to be human remains. The location was remote, nestled deep within a rocky outcrop, almost as if nature itself had conspired to keep the secret hidden for so long. The discovery was immediately reported, and a team of forensic anthropologists, accompanied by seasoned park rangers, descended upon the site. What they found was a chilling tableau, a scattered collection of bones, bleached by the sun and weathered by the elements, unmistakably human. Among the remains, a few tattered remnants of clothing, faded and degraded by years of exposure, offered the first tangible link to the past. And then, a small, yet profoundly significant detail emerged from the debris. a distinctive pendant, intricately carved with a Celtic knot design, clutched within a skeletal hand. Laura's sister, upon seeing a photograph of the pendant, immediately recognized it. It was a cherished family heirloom, a gift from her grandmother, worn by Laura on every adventure, a symbol of protection and connection to her roots. The confirmation was swift and devastating. These were, unequivocally, Laura's remains. The long-held uncertainty, the fragile threads of hope, were suddenly severed, replaced by the cold, hard reality of death. But the discovery, while providing a devastating answer to the question of her fate, simultaneously ignited a whole new firestorm of questions. The location of the remains was far from Laura's planned hiking route, deep in a section of the park known for its rugged and unforgiving terrain, a place where few hikers dared to venture. This geographical discrepancy immediately raised a crucial red flag. Why would an experienced and meticulous hiker like Laura deviate so drastically from her carefully planned itinerary? The initial assumption of a simple lost hiker began to unravel, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The forensic examination of the site was meticulous, a painstaking process of piecing together the fragments of a decade-old tragedy. Every bone, every scrap of fabric, every piece of debris was carefully cataloged and analyzed. The initial assessment of the skeletal remains revealed no obvious signs of trauma, no clear indication of a fall or an attack. The cause of death remained elusive, obscured by the passage of time and the relentless work of nature. However, it was during the sifting of the surrounding soil that a truly astonishing discovery was made, one that would irrevocably alter the course of the investigation and shatter every previous assumption. Partially buried beneath a rock, nestled within the desiccated remnants of what appeared to be a hiking boot, was a small, unassuming object, a USB flash drive. Its exterior was weathered, bearing the marks of years of exposure to the elements, but its structural integrity seemed remarkably preserved. The discovery of a technological artifact at such a remote and isolated burial site was, in itself, highly unusual. Hikers typically carry essentials, and while a camera might be common, a standalone USB drive seemed out of place, almost an anomaly. The forensic team, recognizing the potential significance, carefully extracted the drive, handling it with the utmost care, knowing that within its circuits might lie the final, devastating chapter of Laura's story. This small, plastic device, no larger than a thumb, held the potential to speak volumes, to bridge the decade of silence, and to finally give voice to the lost. The anticipation in the forensic lab was almost unbearable as technicians attempted to retrieve data from the weather-beaten device. The success of this endeavor was far from guaranteed. Years of moisture, temperature fluctuations, and physical degradation could have rendered the data irretrievable. But against all odds, a flicker of life emerged from the drive. It was damaged, certainly, but not entirely beyond repair. Specialists worked tirelessly, employing advanced data recovery techniques, carefully reconstructing corrupted files, and painstakingly sifting through the digital detritus. What they eventually recovered was not a single, cohesive file, but a fragmented collection of video clips and audio recordings, each one a chilling whisper from the grave. The quality was often poor, the images distorted, the audio crackling with static, but the content was undeniably Laura's. Her voice, once a distant memory, now filled the sterile confines of the lab, a haunting echo from the past. The videos, brief and often shaky, appear to be self-recordings, fragments of her final days, captured with an urgency that hinted at a growing desperation. In one particularly disturbing clip, her face, usually so vibrant, was gaunt and etched with fear, her eyes wide with an unspoken terror. Her voice, though faint, carried a tremor of panic, speaking of being lost, of the strange, unsettling sound she was hearing, of an inexplicable sense of being watched. She spoke of a drastic change in her surroundings, a detour she couldn't account for, a feeling of being disoriented in a way that defied her years of experience. The recovered footage, though incomplete, was a gut-wrenching revelation, shifting the narrative from a tragic accident to something far more sinister. It painted a picture not of a hiker merely lost, but of a young woman in distress, seemingly in danger, desperately trying to document her terrifying ordeal. The implications were profound, transforming Laura's disappearance from a cold case into an active criminal investigation, injecting a horrifying new dimension into the long-held mystery. The USB drive, a tiny beacon of truth found in the most unlikely of places, had cracked open a decade of silence, revealing a truth far darker than anyone had dared to imagine. It was a testament to the fact that even in death, Laura had found a way to communicate, to leave behind a digital breadcrumb trail that would ultimately expose the true horror of her final moments. The wilderness, once a silent accomplice, was now forced to yield its darkest secret, thanks to the tenacity of a small, forgotten piece of technology. The discovery of the USB drive and the chilling footage it contained sent shockwaves through the investigative team. The narrative shifted dramatically, irrevocably, from a tragic hiking accident to a potential crime. Laura had not simply succumbed to the wilderness. She had encountered something or someone that had fundamentally altered her journey, leading her to a remote, off-trail location, miles from her intended path. The fragmented videos and audio clips revealed a descent into terror, a slow-burning realization of an unspeakable danger. Her voice, initially filled with the enthusiasm of an adventurer, gradually gave way to an unmistakable tremor of fear, then outright panic. In one particularly disturbing audio recording, barely discernible through the static, Laura whispered about strange markings she had found on trees, symbols that she didn't recognize, that seemed out of place in the natural environment. She described an unsettling silence, broken only by what she thought were footsteps, not animalistic, but deliberate, human-like, always just beyond her line of sight. She spoke of feeling disoriented, as if the landscape itself was shifting around her, deliberately leading her astray. These were not the words of a lost hiker disoriented by familiar terrain. These were the desperate observations of someone experiencing something deeply unnatural, profoundly menacing. The psychological impact of these recovered fragments on the investigators was immense. They were no longer dealing with a cold case file, but with a living, breathing testament to a young woman's final, horrifying moments. The footage, though grainy and incomplete, offered a raw, unfiltered glimpse into her escalating dread. It was a voice from the grave, demanding justice, demanding answers. The initial police theory, once firmly rooted in the plausible explanations of exposure or accidental injury, crumbled under the weight of this new evidence. The meticulous planning of an experienced hiker, the drastic deviation from a route, the explicit expressions of fear and disorientation, all pointed to an external, malevolent force. The search now became a criminal investigation, a hunt for a perpetrator who had, for a decade, remained hidden in the shadows of the vast, indifferent wilderness. The focus shifted from merely finding Laura to understanding why and how she ended up in such a remote location, and who or what had precipitated her terror. The symbols Laura mentioned became a new focal point, a potential clue to an unknown entity, a signature left behind by a predator operating in the unmonitored expanses of the national park. The wilderness, once seen as a neutral backdrop, now transformed into a potential crime scene, a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, guarding not only the remains of the victim, but also the chilling truth of her final moments. The entire perspective of the case had been flipped on its head by this tiny, resilient piece of technology, pushing the investigators into a realm of the unimaginable, forcing them to confront a darkness lurking beneath the surface of California's picturesque landscapes. The immediate priority following the data recovery was to analyze every frame, every soundbite, for clues that could identify the perpetrator or shed light on the circumstances of Laura's demise. The snippets were often frustratingly vague, fleeting images, muffled sounds, yet together they began to paint a terrifying picture. One particularly disturbing audio clip contained a muffled struggle, a gasp, and then a profound silence, punctuated only by the rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds, an eerie juxtaposition of nature's indifference and human despair. This single clip was a game-changer. It strongly suggested a violent confrontation, putting to rest any lingering doubts about an accidental death. Laura had been attacked. The location where her remains were found, deep within an isolated section of the park, took on a new, grim significance. It was no longer merely a place where a lost hiker had succumbed. It was now a potential crime scene, carefully chosen for its remoteness, its natural ability to conceal a terrible act. Investigators revisited the area with a forensic lens, meticulously searching for any additional evidence that might have been overlooked in the initial decade-old search. They expanded the search radius, employing specialized K-9 units trained to detect human remains and forensic evidence, hoping to uncover more clues that nature had held captive for so long. They scoured the terrain for discarded items, footprints, anything that could link a suspect to the scene. The weather patterns from 2012 were also carefully reconstructed, examining rainfall, temperature, and wind direction to understand how environmental factors might have preserved or degraded potential evidence. The geological features of the area were mapped, looking for anomalies, for signs of human alteration in an otherwise pristine environment. Every rock, every tree, every patch of soil was scrutinized for microscopic evidence, for any foreign particles that didn't belong to the natural ecosystem. The case, now officially a homicide investigation, commanded significant resources, drawing in experienced detectives from multiple agencies, forensic specialists, and even behavioral profilers. The profiles developed were grim, painting a picture of a predator who understood the wilderness, who could move silently and with purpose through its labyrinthine paths, and who deliberately sought out isolated victims. The true breakthrough, however, came from the detailed analysis of the recovered video fragments. While many were short and blurry, one clip, only a few seconds long, contained a fleeting image that sent a shiver down the spines of the investigators. In the background, barely visible behind Laura's terrified face, a shadowy figure could be discerned. The image was distorted, undoubtedly, but with advanced digital enhancement techniques, the faint outlines of a man emerged. He was partially obscured by foliage, his features indistinct, but he was undeniably present. And then, an even more chilling detail became apparent. A distinct, almost glinting object in his hand. It was an arrowhead, crudely fashioned, but undeniably sharp, reflecting a sliver of sunlight. The image was grainy, yet the shape and distinct markings of the arrowhead were clear enough to suggest a specific, unusual design. This detail, seemingly insignificant in isolation, suddenly illuminated one of Laura's whispered fragments from the audio recordings. Her mention of finding strange symbols on trees, symbols that seemed ancient, almost tribal. The arrowhead and the symbols, together, began to coalesce into a terrifying pattern. The primitive nature of the weapon and the unique markings pointed away from a random act of violence, suggesting something far more deliberate, perhaps ritualistic, or at the very least, highly unusual. This was not a modern-day mugging gone wrong. This was something rooted in a deeper, darker history, an anachronism in the heart of a national park. The investigation now expanded to include historical records, local folklore, and even anthropological studies of indigenous practices in the region. Were these symbols tied to a forgotten tribe, an ancient belief system? Was there a cult operating in the shadows of the park, preying on unsuspecting hikers? The possibilities, however outlandish they seemed, had to be explored. The discovery of the arrowhead, coupled with the elusive figure in the video, transformed the case from a missing persons investigation into a hunt for a cold-blooded killer with potentially unsettling motivations. The implications were profound, suggesting a threat far more insidious than a simple lone wolf predator. The wilderness, once seen as a place of natural beauty, now revealed itself to be a potential hunting ground, a silent stage for a terror that had remained hidden for a decade. The USB drive, a mere sliver of plastic and metal, had not only given Laura a voice, but also exposed a chilling truth that challenged the very fabric of human understanding. The hunt was now on, not just for a killer, but for the meaning behind the symbols, the story behind the arrowhead, and the dark secret that had claimed Laura's life in the vast, unforgiving expanse of Sequoia National Park. The distinct design of the arrowhead, painstakingly enhanced from the blurry video, became the primary focus of a specialized team of forensic anthropologists and cultural historians. Its unique serrations and the specific type of stone used suggested a highly specific origin, pointing away from commercially produced tools. This was a handmade artifact, bearing the hallmarks of an artisan, perhaps even an ancient one. The experts, poring over archaeological databases and historical records, began to narrow down potential origins. They cross-referenced the design with known indigenous tribes that once inhabited the Sequoia National Park region, as well as those that might have passed through for trade or hunting. The symbols Laura had mentioned in her audio fragments, those strange markings on trees, were now given renewed urgency. They were painstakingly reconstructed from her descriptions, sketches created and compared to various tribal pictographs, petroglyphs, and ceremonial markings. The combination of the arrowhead's design and the tree symbols provided a tantalizing, yet frustratingly elusive, link to a lost or forgotten cultural practice. Was this a relic of the past, wielded by someone who sought to revive ancient traditions in a twisted, malevolent way? Or was it a deliberate misdirection, designed to throw investigators off the scent? The questions mounted, each more unsettling than the last. The investigation delved into the shadowy world of historical anomalies and cultural fringe groups. They explored theories of wilderness cults, isolated communities that shunned modern society and adhered to archaic beliefs, sometimes with violent implications. The vastness of the national park, with its hidden valleys and unexplored caves, provided ample cover for such groups to exist, unseen and unheard, for decades. The silence surrounding Laura's disappearance, the lack of any eyewitnesses, now seemed less like a coincidence and more like a deliberate act of concealment. The very wilderness that provided a canvas for natural beauty now became a potential fortress for dark secrets. In parallel with the cultural analysis, the digital forensics team continued its relentless efforts to extract any additional information from the corrupted USB drive. They employed advanced algorithms, machine learning, and even manual bit-by-bit data reconstruction. Every fragment, every corrupted byte, was a potential key to unlocking the full story. Their perseverance paid off. Hidden within a deeply corrupted sector, they discovered a series of time-stamped metadata logs. These logs, though not actual video or audio, revealed the precise dates and times when Laura's device had attempted to record. More importantly, they indicated brief, erratic bursts of connection to a Wi-Fi network, an impossibility in the heart of the remote wilderness. The Wi-Fi signals were weak, intermittent, and almost certainly not public access points. This detail was profoundly shocking. It meant that Laura had, at some point, been in close proximity to a dwelling, a structure, or at the very least, a powerful portable network transmitter, far off her expected trail. The presence of a Wi-Fi signal in such an isolated area drastically altered the search parameters and the working theories. It suggested a more permanent, established presence in the wilderness than a transient hiker or a simple reclusive individual. The perpetrator, if there was one, likely had a base of operations, a hidden sanctuary within the park's vastness. This new information, combined with the earlier clues, began to paint a terrifying portrait of a calculated predator, someone who had established a clandestine existence in the wilderness, possibly for years, operating under the radar of park authorities. The Wi-Fi signals also offered a tantalizing, albeit faint, digital breadcrumb trail. While the precise location of the signal could not be pinpointed with absolute accuracy due to its weakness and intermittency, a general vicinity could be established. This significantly narrowed down the search area, transforming an immense, sprawling national park into a more manageable grid for ground teams. The geographical data from the Wi-Fi logs, when overlaid with detailed topographical maps of Sequoia National Park, revealed a cluster of potential signal points around a particularly rugged and sparsely explored canyon system. This area was known for its difficult access, its dense, old-growth forests, and its numerous caves and rock shelters, an ideal location for someone seeking to live off the grid, unnoticed. A specialized tactical unit, comprised of highly trained park rangers, federal agents, and wilderness survival experts, was assembled. Their mission was to conduct a stealthy reconnaissance of the designated canyon system, searching for any signs of human habitation, any hidden structures, any anomalies that might betray a clandestine presence. The tension was palpable as the team moved through the dense undergrowth, their movements silent, their senses acutely tuned to every rustle, every snap of a twig. They moved with the utmost caution, aware that they were venturing into the potential lair of a dangerous and elusive individual, someone who had successfully evaded detection for a decade, someone who had likely claimed Laura's life. The area was eerily quiet, the natural sounds of the wilderness amplified by their heightened senses. They found no obvious trails, no discarded trash, no visible signs of human activity. It was as if the wilderness was actively resisting their intrusion, protecting its secrets with its vast, impenetrable embrace. But the Wi-Fi logs had been too specific, too persistent to be dismissed. There had to be something there, some hidden truth waiting to be uncovered. After days of painstaking, covert reconnaissance, one of the team members, a seasoned ranger with an intimate knowledge of the park's hidden corners, noticed an almost imperceptible irregularity in the dense forest canopy. It was a subtle patch of disturbed vegetation, a faint discoloration in the natural tapestry of greens and browns, almost too insignificant to register. Upon closer inspection, partially concealed by strategically placed boulders and camouflage netting, they discovered a narrow, almost invisible trail. It was meticulously maintained, deliberately obscured, leading away from any known paths deeper into the canyon system. Following this hidden trail, the team proceeded with extreme caution, their weapons at the ready, their senses on high alert. The trail led them to a deeply recessed cave entrance, almost entirely hidden by a thick curtain of vines and overhanging rock formations. A faint, almost imperceptible wisp of smoke, barely visible against the backdrop of the towering pines, emanated from the cave's opening, betraying a definite human presence. This was it. This was the source of the Wi-Fi, the hiding place of Laura's killer, the long-sought-after answer to a decade of torment. The air grew heavy with anticipation, a mixture of dread and grim determination. The silent, ancient wilderness was finally ready to give up its darkest secret, to reveal the truth of Laura's final moments, and to expose the identity of the monster who had lurked within its majestic shadows for so long. The true horror of Laura's last days was about to be laid bare, and the world would finally learn the devastating truth hidden within the heart of Sequoia National Park. The tactical team, having located the concealed cave entrance, meticulously prepared for entry. The air was thick with tension, the anticipation almost unbearable. This was not just a search. It was the culmination of a decade-long quest for truth, a confrontation with the shadowy figure who had eluded capture for so long. The element of surprise was paramount. Moving with practiced stealth, they breached the cave, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness, illuminating a scene that would forever haunt their memories. The cave was not a simple, natural formation. It was a sophisticated, almost subterranean dwelling, clearly designed for long-term habitation. Makeshift furniture crafted from salvaged wood and scavenged materials lined the walls. A crude cooking area, complete with a perpetually smoldering fire pit, permeated the air with the faint scent of wood smoke and something else, something vaguely unpleasant. Tools, some modern, some primitive, lay scattered on makeshift tables. The flickering beams of their flashlights danced across shelves filled with carefully preserved foodstuffs, dried herbs, and an assortment of odd, handcrafted items. This was a survivalist's lair, a meticulously maintained sanctuary in the heart of the wilderness, clearly built by someone with considerable skill and a profound desire for isolation. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, the team discovered the occupant. He was an older man, gaunt and wild-eyed, with a long, unkempt beard and clothes that seemed to be fashioned from animal hides and repurposed fabrics. He was huddled in a corner, clutching a crudely fashioned spear, his gaze darting frantically, reflecting a profound paranoia and hostility. His face, etched with years of sun and solitude, was a mask of suspicion and defiance. The man offered no resistance when confronted, but his silence was unnerving, his eyes holding a disturbing, almost animalistic intensity. He was clearly accustomed to a life without human interaction, a solitary existence far removed from the norms of society. As the team secured the area and began their initial sweep, the true horror of the cave began to unfold. It was a repository of bizarre and deeply disturbing artifacts, a museum of madness. Animal bones, meticulously cleaned and arranged, adorned ledges and shelves, some carved with the same strange symbols Laura had described. There were also human teeth, strung together like morbid beads, alongside dried animal parts and bundles of unknown herbs. The air grew heavy with a sense of malevolence, a palpable darkness that permeated the very stone of the cave. The discovery of a hidden compartment, cleverly disguised behind a loose rock, revealed a collection of Laura's belongings. Her hiking boots, her backpack, her water bottle. These items, once symbols of her vibrant life, were now chilling trophies, silent witnesses to her terrifying ordeal. The contents of her backpack, spilled and scattered, confirmed the meticulous planning she had always undertaken. This was no random encounter. This was a deliberate act, perpetrated by someone who had clearly watched and waited. The man, eventually identified as Elias Thorne, a recluse who had vanished from society decades prior, remained stubbornly silent during his initial interrogation. His refusal to speak only deepened the mystery surrounding his motives and the full extent of his crimes. However, the forensic evidence gathered from the cave, combined with the detailed analysis of Laura's USB drive, began to paint a horrifying picture of her final days. The unique arrowhead from the video was found amongst Thorne's possessions, along with tools clearly used to fashion similar primitive weapons. The strange symbols Laura had described were carved into the cave walls, alongside other, more complex pictographs that appeared to be a twisted personal mythology. It became clear that Thorne was not simply a survivalist. He was a predator, operating under the guise of an ancient, self-invented spiritualism. His actions were not random acts of violence, but calculated, ritualistic atrocities carried out in the deep solitude of the wilderness. He saw himself not as a killer, but as a purifier, a guardian of the ancient forest, weeding out those he deemed unworthy or intrusive. His warped ideology, born of years of isolation and self-delusion, had transformed him into a silent hunter, preying on those who ventured into his self-proclaimed domain. The Wi-Fi signals, initially a source of confusion, were later determined to have originated from a sophisticated, satellite-based portable network device Thorne had acquired years prior, allowing him to monitor the perimeter of his territory without drawing attention. He used it not for communication, but for surveillance, tracking the movements of unsuspecting hikers, identifying potential victims who strayed too far off the beaten path. Under sustained interrogation, confronted with the overwhelming evidence, Elias Thorne finally broke his silence. His confession, delivered in a chillingly calm and detached manner, was a descent into a nightmare. He admitted to observing Laura for days, drawn by her solitary nature and her adventurous spirit, which he perceived as both a challenge and an intrusion. He meticulously stalked her, using his intimate knowledge of the park's hidden trails and natural camouflage to remain unseen. He described how he deliberately disoriented her, altering trail markers, creating false paths, slowly driving her deeper and deeper into his territory, away from any hope of rescue. He wanted to break her, to make her succumb to his will, to transform her into a vessel for his twisted beliefs. The strange symbols she had seen were his own personal markings, a perverse form of branding designed to sow fear and disorientation, to mark his territory and his victims. The USB drive, he explained, was a cruel game, a macabre memento. He knew she was recording, and he allowed it, even encouraged it in his own twisted way, seeing it as a testament to his power, a digital trophy of his conquest over her will. He had, in his own deranged mind, been creating a historical record of his purification rituals. He spoke of the struggle, of Laura's desperate attempts to fight back, her screams echoing through the silent canyons. He recounted how he finally subdued her, not with a quick, merciful blow, but with a slow, agonizing suffocation, fulfilling his ritualistic fantasy. He then methodically dismembered her body, carefully placing the remains in a secluded spot, convinced that nature would reclaim her and erase all traces of his actions. The pendant, he admitted, he left on purpose, a final, taunting signature, a fragment of her identity to be eventually found, a silent testament to his dark dominion over the wilderness. The full scope of Elias Thorne's crimes, however, was far more extensive than just Laura's murder. During the subsequent forensic investigation of the cave and its surrounding area, additional human remains were discovered, carefully concealed in other hidden burial sites. These remains belonged to several other hikers and campers who had been reported missing over the past 2 decades, their disappearances previously attributed to accidents or unknown circumstances in the vast, unforgiving park. Thorne had been operating for years, a silent predator in the heart of one of America's most beloved national parks, his victims vanishing without a trace, their fates shrouded in mystery and despair. Each set of remains, each piece of evidence, each chilling detail from Thorne's confession peeled back another layer of the long-held mystery, revealing a chilling history of terror and brutality. The discovery of a worn, leather-bound journal among his possessions, filled with cryptic entries and detailed sketches of his rituals, provided further, horrifying insight into his deranged mind. He meticulously documented his victims, their dates of disappearance, and the twisted justifications for his actions. He even included crude drawings of the symbols he had carved on trees, each one a grim testament to his reign of terror. The journal also contained disturbing details about how he learned to evade park authorities, how he constructed his hidden dwelling, and how he developed his sophisticated surveillance methods. He saw himself as an invisible force, a natural predator, untouchable and untraceable within his wilderness domain. The trial of Elias Thorne was a national sensation, a chilling expose of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected corners of the world. The recovered footage from Laura's USB drive, despite its fragmented nature, was presented as undeniable evidence, a voice from the grave testifying to her terrifying final moments. Her fear, her desperation, her ultimate demise were laid bare for the jury to witness, creating a profound emotional impact. The testimony of the forensic experts, detailing the unique arrowhead, the strange symbols, and the multiple hidden burial sites, painted a grim picture of a cold-blooded, ritualistic killer. Thorne himself remained largely impassive throughout the proceedings, his eyes betraying no remorse, no understanding of the gravity of his actions. His unwavering belief in his own warped ideology, his conviction that he was merely fulfilling a higher purpose, was deeply unsettling. He was a man consumed by his own madness, utterly devoid of empathy or human connection. The families of his many victims, finally receiving answers after years of agonizing uncertainty, expressed a mixture of relief and profound sorrow. The truth, however horrific, finally allowed them to begin the long, arduous process of grieving and healing. The case served as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk even in the most beautiful and seemingly pristine environments, and a resilience of human connection that transcends even the darkest of tragedies. Elias Thorne was ultimately convicted on multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison, ensuring that his reign of terror over the wilderness was brought to a definitive end. The cave, his dark sanctuary, was meticulously dismantled and sealed, a final act of reclaiming the sacred land from the shadow of his malevolence. The wilderness of Sequoia National Park, once a silent accomplice to his crimes, could finally begin to heal, its ancient trees once again standing as guardians of peace rather than unwitting sentinels of a horrifying secret. The enduring memory of Laura and all of Thorne's victims became a poignant testament to the fragility of life, the profound impact of loss, and the unyielding determination of those who refuse to let the lost be forgotten, even when confronted with the darkest truths.